topic of computer science, what I work in, which I can convey to a mixed audience. At the same time, those oversimplified things can convey at least some meat of the real science up to what is happening today. So I've chosen one particular thing, what I call finding patterns in data. Of course, in a generic sense, most of research is just finding patterns in data. Any discovery is essentially, look at all observations, pour over data, find some insights, out of which get regularities. So finding patterns in data in its generality, of course, is what human beings have been doing for millennia. That's what gave rise to all the. So essentially, all discoveries are just finding the right patterns in data. In my favorite example of finding the right patterns in data, and of course, everybody who talk here, a good portion of people who talk here are all this, so the physics example. So Kepler poured over few masses of data, 30 years of planetary observations, and distilled them into beautiful three laws. It takes, of course, an enormous caliber to find such patterns in masses of data, and that's what led to the universal gravitational law. But of course, we are going to talk about finding patterns in a much more mundane level. So, in the last 20 years or so, 20 years now, ever since computers have become proliferated, the network has come, people can now create a lot of data on the web. Too much data is available from credit card companies, from browsers, from online, .com kind of companies, to all kinds of things, from banks, registries, and hence it becomes interesting to ask: can we automatically find useful patterns in masses of data? The area of computer science that deals with it is known as data mining. It's about discovering useful knowledge from data. So what we're going to talk today is about some aspects, a few algorithms of how one tries to make sense of large amounts of data. I'll just take one particular kind of data to make sense. So this is how I'm organizing my talk. There's one kind of patterns that people have found very useful when one analyzes large mass of data. So I'll give a little idea of what are frequent patterns, the basic idea of data. And then we'll choose one particular kind of data to analyze. As I said, I had a choice between making it a overview of various kinds of development that come, or just take one problem and give you a sense of how this kind of computations are actually done. I decided to choose the second option. So we'll take a specific kind of pattern finding problem, or what I call frequent source event streams, and we'll see some examples of how one goes about it. And these days all roads lead to biology, and so we'll look at one simple biology example of how this kind of finding patterns in data can be used to understand how certain neural circuits behave. So that's what data mining is about. I copied it from the masthead of the IEEE computer. IEEE computer is the standard journal for as opposed to the transactions. It's the journal for the Science Society IEEE, and they have a column called Open Chat. Anything whatsoever any reader wants can write there, and their masthead is this. So that's what data mining is about. Facts, of course, are there. Facts can be collected, but trying to look at them in the right point of view to make sense out of it is what data mining is about. So, as a textbook definition, we can say it's analysis of large databases to discover patterns. interesting relationships. Essentially, the goal is to summarize data in a way that is interesting to the want of the data. So interesting is not, interesting depends on what you want to do with it. So essentially, so we'll keep the definition very open. So the goal is to do something that helps the data work. Very often unsupervised essentially means you don't know what you're looking for to start with. So you can't, as I said, Kepler is a good example to keep in mind. You have planetary positions, and from there to Earth perpendicular, there is a great leap. You don't know what you're looking for really. So you go for that. We're not looking at that high level still. Yeah. For those of you who might be computer science students, by a database, we just need any source of data. Not necessarily an Excel file or not necessarily anything that comes with a full relational database and so on. Any source of data is a database for us. We're not really talking technically about databases. There are many things you can do with data. Finding patterns in data is how all of us learn. When you take a kid and point out to him, this is a dog, this is a cat, I have to find what is it in the shape there that characterizes it. I see other dogs, I learn it. There are many 3 or 4-year-old kids who can much better distinguish between, let's say, Maruti cars and Hyundai cars. I have to still read the. So you somehow characterize what is common to shape. So finding patterns and using it for prediction is how we learn. When some of this is done at a subconscious level, we don't know how it is done. And at a much more conscious level, when we learn about calculus, integration, the task of all teachers is to somehow maybe recognize what time when you look at a function to indicate whether it is integrated by parts or not. So there are patterns that you learn through at various levels. There are classification columns, time series prediction, and so given data, there are many things you may want to do. You watch your user who is browsing and want to predict what he wants next. Right? All the advertisement dollars of Google depends on trying to figure out what this user likes. You look at what all is clicked, and you want to somehow from that pattern figure out what you would like to see, what he doesn't like to see. So all that kind of analysis is called predictive analysis. Also, you want to describe data better. You want to cluster the data. You want to say these data look like similar, these data look like similar, and so on. But apart from all this, there is one kind of thing that data mining has started with more or less, what are called frequent patterns. A pattern is just some kind of a local structure in data. By local, if you think of data, let's say as a sequence or as a plot of tuples, it doesn't say anything about the entire data or entire data. It says something very specific about certain kinds of columns or rows in the data. Or if it's a time series data, something locally, whatever it will do. Many of you who add the word model, whenever we see a phenomena, whenever we have a source for data, we may want to model it. If I can model it, I know how it behaves. But models are much more complicated process. A good example to understand this is, let's say we want content-based retrieval solution. Many of you might have used these caller ID tools, caller tools. Now many mobiles come with, if a particular song is playing on radio or TV anywhere, you record a bit of it and send it to some number. He will pull out that song and make it to market. So if I actually have this song, he has to search in a database to find where the song is and pull out the right music and play it. But this doesn't work if I have this song. If the song is correct, then I actually match the exact model of the song. If I have this song, My friend can understand. Of course, I have a very bad hammer. I'm not even able to always say that. But most of us, even if you hum off key, there are some local changes of pitch that is good enough to trigger what song you're trying. As a whole, it doesn't model that particular speech output. But there are still some local patterns of pitch going up and down. That's good enough for me to figure out. So there are many cases where just some local patterns are interesting and useful. That's basically what the feedback pattern analysis is about. This is particularly important because in most of these data sources that we consider, getting a real model for the entire data source is too complicated. So you're asking, can I get some local models and make some progress? What we're going to look at is frequency occurring patterns that contain enough useful information. Sometimes very infrequently occurring patterns also contain useful information. But this lecture will only look at frequently occurring patterns that contain useful information. So let's look at one particular example problem before we go to what I said about data mining and look at that. This is just to get a feeling of what frequently occurring pattern means. Let's say I have a data which is a set of records. Those who don't know what is it, just a tuple of values. Suppose you've got a huge table. Each column is some attribute. So each column has some value. So the entire row is some set of values that together define something. What could they be? For example, there could be items bought by customer at a store. Every time I pick something, sit on my shopping bag, check out and check out counter. There is one bill that comes, so the computer knows what I bought. So I bought item number 42, item number 45, item number 56, which might happen to be read by the job. So it can be thought of as a big table. The columns are the items that the store has. Each row is what the customer bought. Or it could be a set of courses taken by a student. Unlike some of the other colleges, say post-grad colleges like ISC, have a lot of freedom for students. So there are no prescribed courses. For example, our ME students, after the first term, there were no prescribed courses. They will just make up 5 courses from the basket of all the courses that are offered. So each student chooses his own set of courses depending on his interest. So different students will take different courses. So I can think of my database as just a record. Please record the tuple values. For example, tuples could be set of items bought by customer, set of courses taken by student. What is it we want to find out of it? A pattern could be what is called a frequent items. It could be a subset of things that are present in most records. In our example, what could they be? Some items are often bought with. Bread and butter are often bought with. Baby food and diapers are often bought with. Flowers and cards, greeting cards may often be bought with. So there is a lot of utility for the store to figure out that certain items are bought with. For example, it's very useful for marketing. If I want to give an offer, I know which kind of items can be offered along with which kind of items. Similarly, some courses are often related together. Today we had our department's meeting for setting timetable for our next term, starts in August. So even though there are no prescribed courses, looking at the past record, we know students prefer to take these courses together and we want to avoid clashes as much as possible. So it's useful to know which courses are taken together. Just like it's useful to know which kind of items are often bought. So given this mass of data, I have a supermarket check with the program. Looking at the last 1 month data, I can ask what is bought together. Maybe I can rearrange my store layout, which items are put together. So it's much easier for my customers. Maybe that is what gives me the competitive rates compared to some other supermarkets. All of you see this, when you are in Flipkart or an Amazon, and if you visit their offer, it picks up your preferences and very nicely shows you what you like to see. Behind it are all this kind of algorithm. Let's go a little more further into this. How do I find such item? I've given two set of tools and I want to find this item. How do I find? Should I just list all possible subsets? My store may be selling 1,000 items. I can make all possible subsets and then ask each subset how many people have bought over the last one. and then just talk. The problem is that it is computationally exposed, and the subsets grow huge. If I have, let's say, 26 items in my store, A to Z of my store. Of course, all of us know how exponents grow. Now, it is just an example of how fast it grows. Even 5, 6 tuples I want. The number of possible subsets I have to make for only is just too huge. So what can I do? The point is, I don't want what fraction of people by every possible subset of items. I only want to know, for example, what are the subset of items bought by at least 30% of people or at least 20% of people. Any subset of items that are not bought by 20% of people are not interested. How do I know which subsets to do? We need only frequently occurring ones. But how do I know which subsets to do? The simple idea is that if there is a set of 10 items which is bought by at least 20% of the people, then any 9 out of them is also bought by 20%. A few more may buy, but at least all these people who bought the 10 also bought the 9. So any sub-adjacent could be as frequent as the adjacent. That's a beautiful concept. We just put it a little more mathematically. We will use very, very elementary property. We can think of each record as a binary code. As I said, it's a table. There are columns. Each column is, one column may represent Java, one column may represent whatever, one column may represent coffee, whatever. So essentially, a record, a transaction, somebody bought, is just some ones and zeros. Just a binary, x1, x2, xn. Some x's are zeros, some x's are ones. So what is it you want to know? You want to know the probability that somebody will buy the ith item and jth item and kth item. If we think of it as a probability computed over this data, the probability is simply the fraction of things that happen. Once we think of it like a probability, that the frequency is actually a probability, and we want all frequent items, right? All of us know probability of A intersection B is always a central probability of A probability of B. A subset has always less probability than the other. So, it's very simple, but amazingly interesting idea. What does this do? I know all subset of frequent items are frequent. And put other way, an item cannot be frequent unless all its subsets are frequent. What does it tell me? I don't want to find all possible 10 items. First I look at all 1 item sets. I go over my transactions. Which are the 1 item sets that are bought by at least 20%? Then I combine them to make candidate 2 items. I need to only look at frequent 1 item sets to make candidate 2 items. Then I once again count to find what are the frequent 2 items. And so on. I'll actually, about 5 minutes down the talk, I'll give you an example of this after I can use a few more months of time. A specific numerical example of how far this happens. But this really controls the combinatorial expression. Basically, it works because I put a threshold on frequency. Those of you who know a little more probability, if my x1, x2, xn as we call the binary number, if they are all of them are independent, for example, then either all possible 5 items sets have the same probability, so either all of them are frequent or all of them are not frequent. But that's not how the world operates. In a store, certainly certain items are related. Because they are related, as I put a right threshold on frequency, the combinatorial exposure is really controlled. As a matter of fact, this is the algorithm which historically was called uprighting. It came out around 95, 96. That is what started the field of data. We'll see an example later on, but we'll just ask how can I use this idea in many other ways. So let me skip through this. Of course, this is a simple example. We're looking at static data. As I told you, we'll actually focus on what I call temporal data. Okay. That's simpler. So temporal data is that it's And once again, the goal is to find interesting local patterns. Knowing that you visited this side and this side and this side, you click this button, this button, this button, this button. What can I say about what you're likely to do next? It's very useful for a search engine to prefix things, to decide what advertisements to show you, so on. And it's useful in many other ways as we'll see. So basically, to understand this, we define certain ways of defining what a pattern means and some algorithms that can be used to obtain patterns. So first, a simple example of how I can make my earlier example into sequences. Now let's say each transaction in my store is actually done through a credit card. So each transaction also carries the identity of the person who did it. So 5 days later you come back to the store, I can relate your previous transaction to the current transaction. So I can see individual transactions over time, and there are many such individuals. Then I can ask what are the buying patterns that are there in this population. So I can follow the sequences of transactions of customers and look for temporal buying patterns. Okay, just for some information, next 2 slides. There are many different approaches. We'll only look at one. One is called sequential patterns. Here, like what I just said, you have many sequences, and you want to look for patterns that occur in sufficient fraction of them. Second is like this source, where you have one single long sequence, and within that sequence you want to look for some interesting structures. Many variations possible. So sequences can be not necessarily timed. For example, as all of you know, a genome is a sequence of 4 characters, a protein is a sequence of amino acids, and the sequence contains lot of information. Functionally related proteins have certain interesting substructures in their sequences. So my sequence can be anything, and my pattern is like item sets, but that occur around the sequence. And we are looking for patterns that occur in many sequences. So that could be, for this example, that could be buying patterns of customers. For proteins, what I call motifs. So there, if I look at functionally similar proteins, 1 group, another group of proteins are functionally similar among themselves and dissimilar from this, I can ask by looking at their corresponding amino acid sequences, what is the motif in the amino acid sequence that gives rise to functionality? Many such works have been done, but we look at the episodes. Here, that is a single sequence of events, and each event has what we call an abstract type and a time of occurrence. And episode is a small set of event types with some order defined on them. The idea is that I can capture temporal dependencies in a time evolving data. There are many examples. The customer transactions already see market research, credit card buying patterns, credit histories. Sports videos, you want to summarize sports video, you want to automatically give it a football match, you want to automatically show only that part where some action is taking place. Now, I have to somehow automatically find some local structure which tells me that this is an interesting pattern, this is not an interesting pattern. Intrusion detection. In a network system, when somebody is trying to attack the system, the actual processors, the legitimate program that running on the system also makes system calls to the underlying operating system commands. Whereas anybody who wants to break in also has to learn something to make calls to the underlying operating system. There are certain patterns, certain signatures of attacks, and that is how many of the intrusion detection systems work. As I said, web navigation data, looking at the click streams of users, can I predict user behavior? In a manufacturing plant, a lot of controllers, each controller, whenever something goes wrong, generates a fault alarm. There are so many fault alarms. Can I use the sequence data to find root cause diagnosis? Electronic medical records, I'll come back to this example, to all these examples later on. The neural data is what I'm going to talk about. The ones in the blue, before, just put them in blue because the simple algorithm that I'm going to tell you have actually been used in each of these 4 applications in the last 4 5 years. There are now running systems using this algorithm. So here is one simple example. Actually a real drawing of a simple assembly, this is a schematic of an assembly line of an engine in a General Motors factory. So there's many tools, there are many controllers, they are all analytically organized. And a lot of things keep going wrong and the controllers are good enough to discover that some internet actually not done and redo the action. And they generate a whole series of what are called fault blocks. There is some fault code in the error code, where it occurred, what is the date and time, how long it took to clear. Now there are certain times the line is not running well, that too many faults are accumulating. Okay? And the engineers have to go over this and ask what is going on. That's essentially what this kind of a data mining process. The algorithm that I tell you, not quite this, look at a simplified version, but essentially the same algorithm is currently running in quite a few assembly plants at the moment. So it was developed in our lab. Okay, so next 3-4 minutes, once again, definitions. So abstractly we think of data as a sequence of events, each event has a type and a time of occurrence. Like by fault in a assembly plant, each fault has a type, it has a station code, an error code, and a time of occurrence. We call the pattern that we want to find as an episode. Essentially, each episode is an ordered set of event types. So A occurs and then B occurs and then C occurs. Or A and B occur in any order together that triggers C. That is the kind of patterns we want to find. So the frequent episode panel formalism is to go back to the formalism. We said is a sequence of events with a type and time of occurrence. So we'll write the sequence abstractly as E1, P1, E2, P2. EI is the type, event type, EI is the time of occurrence. So abstractly that could vary in sequence. So for EI at a time is 10.1, for EI at a time is 3, and so on. Episodes are partially known as the event types. Let me see the maps here. So for example, an episode could be an event of type A occurs, then an event of type B occurs, then an event of type C occurs. Or in any order, events of type A, B, C occur in some close like that. Or events of type A and B occur in any order, but followed by C. So each of these has their own connotation of what it could. So we are looking at episodes like that occur often. If they occur often enough, they will tell you some underlying dependencies among different event types, for example, fault code, which will allow you to diagnose. So episode occurrence is simply events in the data stream that satisfy the order. So if you look at an event sequence like this and an episode like that, so A1, B3, C8 could be an occurrence of this episode is, or A1, B3, C5 could be another occurrence of this episode. Whereas A13, B3, C8 is not an occurrence because B doesn't occur often. How many occurrences are there for ABC then? A1, B3, C5, A1, B3, C18, then this B cannot be used anymore, A1, B15, C18, then A3, B15, C18. 4 occurrences totally. Well, this is not an occurrence of ABC, but it is an occurrence of the parallel episode ABC because there is no time. This is also an occurrence of this kind of episode because A and B can occur in any order, but both of them are to be C's. This is also an occurrence. So depending the episode that you're defining, the order you're defining defines which are occurrences and which are not. A sub-episode is simply like in frequent random search over subsets. Here, the subset has to satisfy the relation. So if this is the episode, A followed by C, B followed by C, or A and B parallel, all those are sub-episodes. But A following B not a sub-episode because the episode doesn't want A to follow. Once again, the same idea we had in item sets, we need the sub-episode to use that. So we define some frequencies, which tells how often it occurs in data. There are many frequencies because counting all occurrences won't work. We'll see why. So, in any case, we define some frequency and say we want all episodes that occur enough number of times. So, if you take This has even sequence, and that is the episode. A1B3C16 is one occurrence. A1B3C18 is another occurrence. A1B3C23 is another occurrence. Counting this is difficult because the idea is determining is huge. When the data is very huge, the whole data can't be kept inside the main. So after I see even A1, how long do I have to remember that I have seen A1? If I was to count this, I will remember this time. So the idea is we want to look at ways of counting where I don't have to look at it more than once. I can do that by counting what I call non-overlap occurrences. If I look at these two occurrences, say A1, B3, C6 and A14, B15, C17, the time window of occurrence here is 1 to 6. The time window of occurrence here is 14 to 17. They are non-overlap. Counting this is very simple, right? I suppose I want to count ABC in this. The moment I say A, okay, say I see A, now I am only looking for B. I am not bothered about anything. I don't remember anything. The moment I see a B, I pick it up. Then I say I am looking for C. Once I see a C, I implement the home and once again start looking for A. So, as the events are lying by me, I can count. I don't remember anything more than the current one event I see. That's why counting non-overlap occurrences turns out to much more computationally efficient. There are many other ways of defining these things. In general, of course, you don't want patterns to be the occurrences span large time, so on. So there could be constraints. So the basic idea is you need efficient algorithms for discovering all frequent episodes, and you also need to know how to define how frequent is frequent. What is the frequency threshold we should use? So the basic problem is that once again the commutative explosion. We have already seen the commutative explosion. We'll see a better example now. So the basic idea of the earlier frequent episodes is that episode will be frequent only if all is sub-episodes are frequent, because any occurrence of the episode contains occurrence of this subsets. So I don't have to count this as a candidate unless I know these are frequent. Which means I can make n-node candidates from L1 as to node episodes. So this is essentially your problem. Let us say I give you this, what looks like jumble, and ask you to find all 6 long sequences. They don't have to be, the occurrences are not necessarily consecutive. I'll show one in red. So C, O, W, G, E, R. That is one episode that occurs at least once. One serial episode that occurs. I'm asking what are all these 6 long episodes that occur in this at least 30 times. This is like immediately a haystack problem. So what do? I start by looking for smaller sequences. As it turns out, because I didn't put 1 and 2 are very loose. But if I'm looking at only 3, there are only about 25 3-long episodes that have at least 30 occurrences. Then, because the E or G is frequent and let's say E or W is frequent, I can make a new 4-letter one which is E or GW or E or WG. That is how I make my 4 long. Now I don't even get 25 or 4 long. I got only about 15 4 longs. Then I make the same thing. I get only about 8 5 long ones, not even like 6 5 long ones. And there's only one 6 long thing which is at least. This is what operator. This particular thing is generated using a very nice probabilistic model. So that only certain things are you can get. But it's very difficult to know what it is by looking at this table. This is what this kind of coding algorithm can do for us. So, how do I generate candidates? Some episodes are frequent, episodes are frequent. So, if I have A, B and A are frequent, then I can generate A, B, D and A. I'll just tell you one more thing about counting. When I'm counting, I have to count for many candidates. So frequency of set of candidates I have to count. Because I'm counting the number of occurrences, let's keep the math and give you the. essentially, let's say I'm counting how many times this occurs, how many times this occurs, how many times this occurs. So each of these can be thought of as an automaton. This guy is single track mind, everybody is looking at the same beat, right? This guy is looking for a G first. The moment he gets a G, he looks for a M, then he looks for a R. Whenever all of them becomes, the count goes up, and once again, same thing here, same thing here. So when the U comes, the U guy takes it, and the X comes, the X guy takes it, Y comes, then B comes, B guy takes it, and so on. So I just have one pass over the data, and I can get counts of all the uses. There are some problems with this kind of bond. I will see. I first see A, then only look for B. Once I look for B, I look for C. So I only see A1, B3, C16. If I want XO to occur, let's say within 10 window of length 10, I have such a one A7, B13, C16, but I will never see that. So we need some extra structure, but that's. Let me skip all the statistics and let me go to examples. So let's look at a few examples where this can be used. This is already told you. This is what I have. This is your sequence of operations in hierarchical distributed controllers. Large number of fault events are logged. So I can take event type to fault code and episodes to possibly give me calling insights. And as I already told you, such algorithms actually find root cause analysis in multi-acting plan these days. Analysis of user behavior. So user actions or user event types, and episodes will tell me what kind of user behavior prediction can be done. Another interesting thing that has been applied for is various hospital. For example, one particular example is different hospitals, when they have emergency patients, they refer them to ICU. ICU is full. Each hospital has its referral to which it refers. So tracking the ICU referrals is a very nice way to track mounting epidemics and so on. That happens only when too many patients are coming. So geographically tracking ICU transfers across hospitals will tell you cascades of transfers, and that allows for efficient redeployment of resources. This is also running currently in the Michigan hospital system. So I just spent 5 minutes explaining the neuronal structure and data on this topic. So I thought I'll take one extra example. Basically, this is all about understanding certain aspects of brain function using computer science. So it's a kind of interdisciplinary area of computer science, mathematics, and neuroscience. Targeted analysis is a simple example problem, and that's one of the grand challenges of the mathematics of the brain. As you know, our brains function because of neurons. Neurons communicate to each other by sending electrical signals. They are called spikes. So each neuron sends electrical signals. Suppose there are a lot of stochasticity there. Each neuron keeps firing signals. So some of them are just random firing, some of them are coordinated firing. So if I look at a group of neurons and look at what they are firing, I have to figure out what is the coordinated behavior there, so that I can understand the microcircuits in neural tissue to correlate what kind of interactions gives rise to what kind of behavior. So there are many experimental techniques today to do this. So there are external electrodes, there are microelectrode arrays which are simultaneously recorded from many neurons. There are imaging techniques which will tell you what neurons are fighting at what time. Essentially, all of them will do this. So there is some neural network like that. This actually happens to be a very good wiring diagram of your vision subsystem. So in any case, you will got the neural got that subsystem, you got a very small thing. And this is what the mass of data looks like. These are just neuron here at this time, neuron B at this time. Buried in this data is some information. which colleges wish to file, what are the time delays, and so on. So the idea is you think of this as your event sequence. So event type A occurred here, B occurred here, B occurred here, A occurred here, C occurred here, and so on. And then ask, what are the episodes? Episodes can give you the kind of cognitive change that are there in the system. So in mathematical terms, there is generating system which has some graph, and you record these things and asking, can I look for episodes and reconstruct the graph? That's the basic idea of using this kind of data analysis techniques for understanding the questions. So one approach to this is to look for finding patterns. A sequence of neurons repeatedly finding fairly constant delays, experimentally observed and often correlates with aging. But the problem with that is that we need to do multi-point correlations which are computationally very difficult. We already seen the combinatorial exposure. That is where we can do the data mining. So we can think of event type as identical neuron, a serial episode as a causative chain, a parallel episode as synchronous firing neurons. Of course, here we need to put a lot of constraints because something is a causative chain, only if A can cause B to fire, and if A is causing B to fire, we can't fire too close to A. There is a specific synaptic delay. So there are a lot of temporal constraints for me to decide whether or not something is a causative event. But still, this is like a multi-electrode array. Those are the electrodes. Underneath is the neural tissue. And my episode can represent specific graphs in the neural tissue. So if I can discover these graphs, discover these episodes, I've actually discovered the functional circuits in neurons. Of course, the episode that we need to discover now is slightly different. Not just A followed by B followed by C followed by D, but also timing information we have to get about. So, unlike earlier, when I look at A and then only look at B, I will keep all the A's and B's with me to know which A can go with which B because I have specific timing constraints. So the algorithms are a little more. See, for example, when this B cell comes, it doesn't go with any A, so you don't have to pursue B cell anymore. So that's a little more difficult game doing the algorithm. But we can infer functional connectivity by finding all frequent episodes. We can infer the strength of connections of the episode forms and the statistical theory also works. So this for the statistical theory. We can actually, from the theory, can tell you whether the theory essentially gives you something like this. If I think of P as a probability and neuron B spikes with the delay of capital P after neuron A spike, I need to have BP because it cannot be exact incident. So, if I think of this as the conditional probability of B firing after delay of P in A fires, then given an episode has so much common, I can say that the conditional probability between A and B has to be above some threshold. That is how the statistics helps you decide how frequent an episode should be to give you the functional connectivity. So, only look at causation stage. We can do this with more general episodes also. Earlier you see if I got ABC and ABD how to make more circles, but we can do similar candidate generation with graphs. Right? We had a very simple thing like want to count ABC, wait for A, then wait for a B, then wait for a C. It just becomes a little more complicated. Right? If I want to think of A and B in any order, followed by C, I first wait for either U or B. First A occurs, then I wait for a B. First B occurs, I wait for a A. Once I both A and B occur, I wait for a C. So it's just same thing, a little more complicated. The statistics also works. And we can further generalize this. We can get Basically, what this kind of techniques will give you is if you have a complex geometrical system to be a large number of interactive variables and you get glimpses of traces on some variables. What you want to update is to put some graph structure. You can't model the entire system, but I can put graph structure to say what subpart interacts with what, in which direction the interaction takes place. So that is how finding pattern can learn from root cause diagnostics in a manufacturing process, doing better business on web browsing, to understanding neural issues. So I just put just there. Before I complete, I have to give credit to people who actually did this work. Dr. Unikrishnan is my long-term collaborator, currently North Shore Institute in North Asian University in Chicago, Elliott Institute in Motors. These are all my students. My PhD students who are what Microsoft is in India. Avinash Shankar is one of the Devaprakash Patnaik is now with Amazon. And one of the master students, Adi, who is now doing PhD at Hansen. Part of the work that presented is here are some. It's a very nice book on data mining, especially cyber activities and cyber data mining. For the episodes, this is what started with specific algorithms that we discussed or in this class. For spike trend data analysis, this gives you the